What's going on, everybody? Before we get into the first podcast, just wanted to give you guys a quick rundown about what this podcast is. So, Broad Street Banter, it's a Philadelphia sports podcast hosted by myself and Will, who you guys will see in a second here. So, we're going to cover the Flyers, Eagles, Sixers, Phillies, occasionally the Union, along with, trade deadline stuff, free agency, playoff predictions, that type of thing. And so, just bear with us here in the beginning, as we have to gain chemistry as hosts together, in terms of, I'm sure in this, I cut him off a few times and whatnot. So there's that. And there's also just, we have to grow in general. So it's going to take some time, but we appreciate any support that people give us. And remember to follow us on all social media. We're not going to just spam with, podcast uploads and all of that. It's going to be, breaking news, general news, and even just breakdowns and other kind of media stuff. So be on the lookout for that. And let's get right into it. Yesterday, the Flyers, they signed Traivs Konecny to an 8-year, $70 million extension, which is about $8.75 million per season. We were actually in a call when it happened. We were figuring out this podcast, and I saw the feed on my Twitter, and I was freaking out, and you had no clue why.
Nope, not a single clue.
Yeah, and then I told you, and we had some instant reactions.
Yeah. I mean, you want to go first? You want me to?
Yeah, go for it, dude.
I mean, right off rip, I was kind of relieved just to see it not having 9 as the first number, though it's close. There were all those rumors circulating that he wanted 9, maybe he even wanted 10. So seeing there not being a 9 in front of that AAV was something that made me feel a little bit better. I know he's 27. He's a fresh 27, so it's not like it's going to be a terribly aging contract. I don't think he'll be 35 by the time the contract's up, or 36, one of those two numbers. But either way, there's players that are still playing at a high level that are older. Not saying he's going to live up to some of those aging grades, but he can still play at that point is the moral of my story. With the rising cap, too, I don't think that it's going to be a terrible contract. I think it's going to be fairly similar in aging to what Owen Tippett got earlier in the season last year. Just kind of might be high for right now, but in a couple of years when that cap is continuing to grow, we're going to look back on that and think that contract is either at market or maybe even a steal. And that's the thing with Traivs Konecny is he's not been the most consistent player over his career. He starts off hot. He slows down. He might have a few streaks here and there. If he can finally put those pieces together, which the Flyers are starting to put those teams around him as well, he might actually end up being worth what he's making. I know we started talking about similar contracts yesterday. We started looking at guys like Sam Reinhart, Jake Gensel, both wingers assigned big contracts this offseason. Reinhart, obviously not as proven, got just a little bit under that number that TK got. It was like
8.6
years, 69. Yeah, it was 8 years, $69 million. So it was just under that marker of what TK got. Gensel got 9 a year from Tampa. But Reinhart might have had the best season. Not might have. He did have the best season of his career. I think we can hands down say that. But he also is the most unproven prior to this season. You look back and at the start of the season, I think I would have taken TK and Gensel over Reinhart in a heartbeat. I don't think that's a question. I don't know if you would agree with that one, but
no, I would agree with that. I mean, the Sam Reinhart breakout this year was unexpected, and the other thing I'm sure that they took into account when giving him that extension was he shot like over 20% this year, Reinhart. So he's not a 50 goal scorer. This just happened to be one of those years. I think he's probably more of like a low 30, 35 type of guy. So I'm sure they took that into account with his contract, where Konecny, I mean, I would argue that Konecny probably could be a better scorer than Sam Reinhart, and I think he has the skills. This year, 33 goals in 76 games, 35 assists, 68 points. It's like you said, towards the end of the season, he falls off. So if he can stay consistent, he's a different player. He's a guy that's pushing 75, potentially 80 points.
No, exactly. And in terms of those other contracts too, one of the other ones I was looking at was Jake DeBrusk, what he got from Vancouver. He got, I want to say it was $5 million a year for, I have it
Yeah.
written down somewhere, 5.5 for 7. So 38.5 is the total number. He didn't have that bad of a season. He wasn't putting up the same numbers as TK, Reinhart, or Gensel. He was well below TK at 60. I think he was somewhere in the low 40s. I want to say he was point wise this season. But at 5.5, that's not a bad AAV. That could end up being one of those two. Like Vancouver bought low, so to speak, and then ends up paying off big time for them. I was hoping that maybe that would not set the market, but people would look at the value of wingers and look at that contract, and maybe that would have brought the contract price down for TK. But obviously, Reinhart getting just $1 million less and Gensel getting 9. The decision wasn't are you going to give TK that contract or not? The decision was, are we going to be the ones that pay him, or are we trading him away? That's what Danny B had to have been saying. I don't think there was a choice for him. I think there's not a doubt in my mind that was the number that TK was going to get. It was just, what was the team going to be? Who was it that was going to give it to him?
No, I agree completely. And, it's one of those extensions that at first the initial reaction was more confusion. We sit here, we talk rebuild. Is this a rebuild? It feels like a retool. It feels like they
can kill the man, but not the idea.
Yeah, like it doesn't feel like this is a rebuild. Now, granted, right, the Couturier contract and whatnot, those weren't given by Briere. So
no,
theoretically, Briere signed Tippett and Konecny now. And when if you said that 2 years ago, we're like, well, yeah, like why wouldn't you, right?
Makes sense.
But now, for some reason, it's just like it feels weird. The Konecny one feels weird. Tippett made sense, obviously, but I'm not gonna. Let me backtrack there. Konecny's when I say it doesn't make sense, I mean that more from a person who was looking to get capital from him. Like that's what I wanted. So to me, it just, I was like, is TK worth keeping over getting what we potentially could have gotten for him?
No, I fully agree with that. And I did kind of think maybe he'd get dealt by the draft, maybe either for a pick this year or even just for a pick next year, given the depth and talent in that class as well. But I think that they probably are sitting there looking at the prospect pool that Danny's put together just within the last 2 off seasons, and they're probably feeling pretty comfortable. I mean, you went out and you turned what was a crappy situation with Cutter and turned that into Jamie Drysdale in a second. Now, Drysdale can pull that injury, just stay healthy. He could pan out pretty well. He looks like a slick skating, right, offensive defenseman. But even then, when he was getting to play in the power play last year, it worked. And maybe you add that with Jett Luchanko going forward, given his kind of sudden rise in the draft, you've got to imagine that potential power play was there. He could be a fit, but that's another prospect you want to talk about is Jett. He could be a big fit. You got Denver Barkey, Oliver Bonk. It's not like they've got an entirely poor farm system going right now.
Jett Luchanko, he needs to pan out, because if he doesn't, we're still at the ground level.
Zero. And that's what confused me. They moved Barkey got moved to the wing this past season. That that had to have been an O move if I'm not wrong, because there's no way the Flyers can look at their center and say he's better off as a winger.
Wasn't it Keith Jones who said that he is going to play center?
Yeah, it was Jonesy.
So I'm sure it's just one of those that's like, okay, like the London Knights are just doing what they need to do to win.
Well, not like the Knights were a team that could just play them anywhere. They probably played them anywhere that they needed to win. The Knights were pretty damn good this year. It was Cowan center this year.
I believe so.
Because that could have played a factor into it too. Maybe keep them on the same line. But
yeah,
getting a little far stretched
on the same line. Oh my god, my feed was blowing up about like the assists back and forth and the goals from them.
Oh, they were unreal. And you still got Bonk getting points out of there too, because you get to play with them too. He was
that Bonk pick. People, listen. When it first happened, I actually liked it. A lot of people hated it, and thankfully, it's looking to develop into something. I'm not gonna, not gonna sit here and say what I think it could be, but
there are names that were picked directly after Oliver Bonk that at least from my perspective as a college hockey fan, I got to watch, and he looked pretty damn good last year. But it'd be great to see what he does this year without Will Smith and without Cutter.
Yeah.
I don't know. Is Leno staying too, or is he? Do you know if he signed?
You're talking about Gabriel, right?
Yeah, I'm talking about. Yeah, but I'm saying is Leonard staying in.
Leonard staying. Yeah.
But still, I mean, I'd love to see what can happen without Will Smith centering that line. That could be a difference maker too. But I don't know. You got 2 first-round picks, especially when you take a Michkov with that first one. It almost forces you into taking a defenseman in the second pick if you didn't take one with the first, because you got to come out with 1 and 1. I feel like.
Yeah. So let's just give our final thoughts on the TK extension. I think it's safe to say both of us are okay with it.
Yeah. No. Look, at the end of the day,
it's not going to ruin the franchise.
We might be in a retool. He's still young. Flyers could be in contention. We saw last year they overperformed. You can add a talent like Michkov, and all of a sudden this team could be flipped right around, especially if that center depth. The centers that are hoping to pan out can pan out. This team could be 100%. Very different. So keeping TK around, not bad. I don't think the contract's going to haunt the Flyers. I think it's going to. Fingers crossed, the age is a little bit better than the Couturier contract, but
I hope, dude. I hope. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to transition right into the fun thing that happened this past week. All right. Or a few days ago at this point. Michkov, he's in Philly. He is here to stay. He is with the team. He has seen the Voorhees facility. So a lot of Flyers fans, from what I've seen on Twitter, a lot of people that maybe don't, they don't really follow the Flyers too much, but they the Flyers are a Philly team, right? So people are like, well, what do we expect from this guy?
I don't want to set the standard too high for him right off rip. I think that's something that.
No, I was going to say, I think when you talk about Drysdale and you said when he was on the power play, it looked really smooth and it was kind of eye-opening. It was like, wow, we haven't had that. I think Michkov's going to bring that same energy where
absolutely
you're just going to see this guy just whatever he's doing on the ice. It's just going to be like, wow.
It's going to be fun to watch him skate this year. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I don't think we should, as Flyers fans or as people who like to talk about the Flyers in front of a camera, I don't think we should set the standard of setting expectations. I don't want him to have to live up to Connor Bedard, or I don't want him to have to 100%. Say 60-point season or this dude's a bust. There
was the guy on Instagram. He ended up posting something. I think Michkov reposted it, but it was he called Michkov the Messiah. And I'm like, oh God, let's listen. I want this guy. All Flyers fans want this guy to be our franchise player, the guy that is, our Ovechkin, our Crosby, whatever, right?
Yeah.
But you can't sit here, look at this 19-year-old, and just expect him to set the league on fire. Because there's going to be growing pains. He is 5'9"? He is not this guy that his game is just going to he's not going to just get on the ice and start dominating. It's going to take a second for him to adjust, right? I mean, more than anybody, the KHL, it is different than the NHL. It's not as competitive as it once was. So there is going to be this period where he's going to have to adjust, and it's going to be fun to watch, though. I think I'm most excited to see this guy on the power play.
I'm excited to just watch him skate. In all honesty, you mentioned it. I don't know if we've had that eye-opening, wow-looking player since Traivs Konecny in October. But I mean, it's going to be really exciting to see him put it all together. And what I'm really excited to is to see how his level of play and maybe the attention that he draws on the ice is going to affect his line mates at the same time. I don't know what their plan is and who they have him playing with, but man, would I love to see him on a line with Tyson and Morgan.
I
That
was
would
gonna
be
say, I feel like he has to be on a line with Tyson specifically so that, like, not to say Tyson plays defense. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. you have we'll call it 3.5 defensive players on the ice when you have that line up there. But I mean, you could maybe slot in a different centerman there. Like maybe Coots could line in there.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to put him with it, but
a guy though like Morgan Frost. You want him with somebody that it's
going to match his pace and is going to be able to keep up with him and keep the excitement there. If excitement's I don't know, I'm trying to think of a better term for that, but in all honesty, like you need someone that I don't think Coots' game is going to match up very well with him. I know.
I don't either. I don't. I'm sure I'm sure Michkov would make it work.
Yeah, or I'm sure they would make anything work look, as long as Michkov never sees the bench, never gets scratched, as long as he's not eating popcorn during games, I'm okay.
Torts knows what Flyers fans would do if he. Now I know that he said that he's going to keep that that same energy with Michkov, right? But like we all know that's talk. That there's no way he does.
It's got to be. That's the one thing. I know I said let's not set any high expectations, high standards for season one. I think the second that he touches the ice in Voorhees in the practice facilities, or the second he touches down at the to be determined name or the Farg, he's going to be the best player in the orange and black. That's not a doubt in my mind. He is already the most talented and the most skilled player. If he can put together some small pieces in the offseason, which I think he should be able to, given that he's here in late July, he's got some time to let everything kind of gel together. And between practice and like training with some NHL guys here, I think we'll be able to put it all together, and he will be the best player on the ice come October.
Yeah, I love the what was it? Was it Briere who told Michkov? He's like, look at this. He's like, showed him Nick Delorier, and he's like, this is your best friend.
I think it was Danny B. He showed him the video of him fighting Rempe, right?
Yeah, I think that's what it was, and I was like, I love that. It's just true. Like, if anyone tries to mess with him, dude, D'Lo's gonna go out there and kick their ass.
That's his role in the team, and that's not changing anytime soon. As long as we keep getting these young guys coming in, D'Lo's got to be around to kind of be the enforcer.
Yeah. So, I guess that brings us to the last little segment of this podcast. This short podcast, probably should have mentioned that at the beginning, is that podcasts, they are separate. So Sixers, that's one podcast. Flyers, one podcast. All 20, 25 minutes, could push 30 depending on what the news is, how much there is. But yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about Jett Luchanko. The Flyers, they drafted him
12. They traded back.
Yeah, so they traded back.
They traded back one to Minnesota because Minnesota moved up to get Zeev.
Yep. So they got him 13th overall. The initial reaction by a lot of people was that it was a reach and it was a far one. Now, apparently, Luchanko had like the greatest combine ever. I mean, this guy from like these like mock drafts, I didn't see his name in the first like 30 to 40 people, and then the combine happened, and then like, okay, you're starting to see him like 25 to 30. So I guess everybody was just very impressed with what he did at the combine.
I'm not gonna lie, when they drafted Jett Luchanko, I sat there and I was kind of stunned. I was a little silent for a little while. I sent some texts and some group chats. Anyone know who this guy is? Look, I was looking into the first round. I won't say I was looking much deeper than the first. I kind of had my heart set on a couple guys in the later rounds. Obviously, they didn't pan out because the later rounds are crazier rounds. But at first round, you kind of had your mind made up. Obviously, Consta was someone that Flyers fans are hoping for. Berkeley Catton going 8. I mean, can't really do anything about that. I mean, obviously Cole Eiserman would have been nice, but we needed a center. Flyers needed to find someone to be the future between two wingers, and Jett could do that. I mean, you talk about that legendary combine. I would love to sit down and watch some of that film and just see really how this guy is. But I think a lot of it could have been like characteristic traits too. I mean, hockey guys aren't always known as being the nicest, most stand-up people, especially when they're playing on the ice. But you look into some of the things that people say, and even like you have Oliver Bonk, who is now future teammates with them, but competitors in the O, and he was basically giving him nothing but kind praise, talking about how he's a one-man power play himself, but also the kind of player you want to play with as a person too. I can't say that moved him from a second-round grade to a first, but for a guy that probably was on the cusp, that could be something that pushed over just a little bit. But the other thing too that I think is always worth noting, especially with this current Flyers regime, is never, ever, ever take anything that Danny Briere says until you actually see what's going on.
Yeah, 100%.
He is the most quiet, sneaky GM in the league right now. If I had to, now granted, that could be a little biased because he's the one that I follow closely, and we see everything that he does. We're not necessarily paying attention to what some of the other GMs are doing across the league, but he's quiet, keeps everything fairly well under wraps, and I don't know if he's had a predictable move. Can't really say if he has.
Don't think he has.
I mean, I know trading Cutter was something that
made me want to. When that happened, I was like, I think I was like in the shower, and I came back out to hang out with like my roommate and some friends, and he was just like, "Yo, did you see? They're like they traded Cutter," and I was like, "Shut up, dude." He's like, "No, seriously." I like looked at my phone. I was like, "What?"
Yeah, no, I had fairly
that
similar.
Literally came out of no. I mean, you want to talk like you said, like this, dude. Nothing comes out with him.
Yeah, nothing, and it took until the trade to find out that he kept Cutter's unhappiness with the Flyers organization so well under wraps that nobody really knew. Well enough to the fact that they got a defenseman who was a highly touted prospect, so to speak, at the time in Drysdale, and also a second-round pick in return for Cutter. I mean, granted, I think it could have been a little bit higher given different circumstances. Not think, it would have been. But that's still a pretty good return. He had to have left it as there's a chance he could come back and play for the Flyers if we don't deal him, but he'll probably not. Even then, that's getting away from my point here. I would not be surprised if Jett Luchanko was a name that was only mentioned in discussions with Danny Briere and Keith Jones. I don't think that anybody else in that organization knew until their name was on the clock. Would I've liked to see maybe they traded back a little further, because I don't think he was going 12 or 13 if the Flyers didn't have that pick. But I mean, if they could have moved back a little bit and got some more assets for this next draft, because I think this next draft is the one that's really gonna.
That's the one they're eyeing. It's going to be this draft. This draft is going to be the one that the Flyers' current prospect pool is gonna get some help.
Yeah, but also at that same thought, like we talk about the rebuild, is this a rebuild or a retool? I think they set that as the end of the timer for the rebuild.
Mm-hmm.
We might think it's a retool. Honestly, they probably know it's a retool. But at the end of the day, I think that is the last draft class where if they don't put it together there, everything that they've done is a failure and they'll blow it all up.
Yeah. And just going back a little bit about Luchanko. So a lot of quotes come out like after the draft. Like you said, like they could have traded back. They definitely could have, and they should have. But it's it's good to hear that there were other GMs out there that when they took him, they were like, okay, dang. Like that was a guy that I was hoping that he would kind of get down to our pick, which is probably later first round, beginning a second. But still, I mean, these people, they admit that like Luchanko has a good ceiling that, listen, let's be real. All right. It's not, if he's a first liner, probably like lower tier, right?
No, I mean, if we're gonna look at first line centers, I mean, he's not
Yeah.
gonna be the guy to do it. But
Like if you want to talk
he
about
could be
like
a high end second line center.
yeah, so like I'm like high end second line center. He's a power play specialist. Like that's what he does. He'll get us in the zone. I'll take it, dude. Have you seen our power play? Like I'll take it.
Reminds me a lot of that power play up in Happy Valley. Not pretty.
Not at all. But yeah, I think that's all we got here. Again, just 3 little topics to talk about with the Flyers as the season is it's sort of visible, a little bit, kind of see
Getting close.
There's a little light at the end of the tunnel. It's on its way. But yeah, I hope that everybody enjoyed. Remember to leave a like and subscribe. Follow us on social media, and we will see you in the next one.